Most welcome to the Voice of Evolution. Let's talk about the crystallization of the body, which doesn't really happen overnight, right? Crystallizing the body comes with light body study and upgrades, many daily upgrades. And that starts out with a foundational crystalline grid that moves through the body at all times. When installed in your home, it moves with you. And so when purifying the body all of the time, we move in the higher vibrational grid construction. For example, if you would like to reconstruct a skeletal structure, you need to know which laser wand you need. You need to know, for example, that we can move from an amethyst from Brazil into an amethyst from Uruguay into an amethyst from Peru. These have crystalline consciousness stored in a crystal. If you look at a crystal ball, for example, that crystallized somewhere over millions of years consciousness in it, and so it holds that consciousness in it. And when you hold that ball and you put them in your home, for example, or you work with an amethyst grid, for example the grapevine of the divine, and you'd like to move your spiritual skeletal construction in, and you move from one crystallization into the other, you will feel that in the bones of your body. But also what it also does is it requires a different diet, and sometimes that's a different diet every month. So you actually upgrade with the elements at the same time, and you will realize, you will start to reject many foods that are not healthy for a light body, as a light body needs quite different foods. It doesn't need as much protein as a body that doesn't work with light construction environment, or spiritual movement or flow in the body, such as working with the elements that grow in the soil, such as the turquoise crystals, which we find all over the place, and how we can co-create with them. So it requires quite some knowledge to move from one crystalline consciousness into the next. And so again, a foundation one grid is required in order to open other grids within the body, and how these ley lines of a grid remove actually dense patterns in the body. Also, when coming back to the skeletal structure when aging, so we have actually a lot of content in the bones that move a bit yellowish actually, and that moves with the aging process. So through the crystallization we can invert the aging and move into the regeneration with the knowledge of how to work with which crystal one point at a time, or and upgrading. So we cannot take the highest vibration of a crystal right down in the body, because the body will, for example, request a higher vibrational content on light foods, for example. So we need to start out and equalize with the elements all of the time, and that requires the clearing of the bloodstream, that requires the clearing of the water content in the body, the respiratory tracts, such as moving from the eternal breath and the omni breath, and having the breath of source in the body. So the breathing system actually breathes these crystalline grids through, and breathes that consciousness through. But as long as the eternal breathing did not kick in, we cannot communicate on a spiritual level with the elements. And so I tested it with many people as when I have crystals in my hands, they start to burn like as hot as fire almost, right? But then again, I worked like 20 years by now with this, and so opening many levels of new knowledge all of the time, which is my passion. And so when I hand that particular crystal to a friend of mine, it stays just dormant, ice cold. And that reason for it is the vibration that does not match the frequency. So that is easy to decipher, just for you to understand that we cannot escape any highway. We need to have fashioned or tasted every highway in order to move into the higher levels of divine crystalline consciousness with the elements, with nature, with everything out there, and start the repair. So the repair of the soil also comes with a crystalline grid construction and moving crystals into the oceans, which will assist the clearing of the muddy waters for the water species are there. And so yes, it's a great time apart from what is happening on social media, the newscast and governmental nonsense. When you move into a crystalline grid construction, you have an easy time to move beyond that and have the right words at the right time. And that is when the rod of power moves back into the thyroid, the parathyroid glands start to move with other elements. And so, as I was saying, the body does not need that much protein anymore, but a lot more potassium. So, zinc is essential, I agree, but then again, copper, titanium, gold, and silver is as essential for a light body to breathe through as well. So once the higher spiritual bodies kick in with the crystalline kingdoms and consciousness, and you override, you rewire continuously many wires in the brain, and knowing how to do that through glandular construction, the bloodstream, the respiratory tracts, etc., and your energy fields, then you will see that your consciousness always changes all of the time. At certain time on the timeline, actually, you will see you cannot think the former ways anymore, and that is when the spiritual vibration hits you, and then you can ground the spiritual grids wherever you walk and talk, and that is where your change will come true in the hood, actually. So that should be done in every school, at least planting a grid, and have one grid plant, one grid seed, or preferably 3 seeds in a school, 3 people, 3 entities, 3 persons willing to do that work. And that what it takes is just planting it 15 minutes a day. Is that really too hard to do, to bring the biggest change through and to bring truth in the schools for our children? Because that is what grids will bring through. And that is how the truth is coming out today. So if we work together in unity, that is what is being required. Crystallizing consciousness together and planting more and more grids, which demands holding the grids within the body, within each chakra system in your body, or just a foundational grid. So there's many ways we can go. It just needs some educational alignment and construction. So once again, I have all these alignments here, at least to move into a vibration, and I'm working out to explain more and more quiz for those interested to do the work. Thank you so much for being